welcome back to another episode of the Millennium Alliance podcast. It's great to have everybody here listening in. We finished up Q1 already in 2025, so we are happy to have our partners Staffbase join the podcast this time around, and we want to thank them for partnering with us on this episode, and to our audience for being the dedicated listeners that they are. And if you are members of the Millennium Alliance, that's even better because you might meet Staff Base at one of our assemblies. And to talk about all the great stuff that that's being done at Staff Base in the you know HR and leadership space, and Staff Base is a leading employee communications platform, so we're gonna have a lot to talk about. But Dave Maffei is with us. He is the general manager and senior vice president of the Americas over at Staffbase. I wanted to bring him on the podcast now. Dave, welcome to the show. It's great to speak with you, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Thanks, Connor. Likewise. Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, and given that the Millennium Live podcast is one of those platforms that you can kind of share your perspective, the story of your career, your overall company value. I think it's a great place to start by sharing your journey and what led you to become the GM and SVP of the Americas over at Staff Base, and sort of the unique perspective that you bring from your previous experiences of growing businesses.
Yeah, appreciate the question. I have been for the better part of the last 20 plus years in the sort of digital experiential software world. So I started my career on the public facing website side. Creating digital web experiences for sort of anonymous website visitors in the content management or digital experience management world. And then in 2015, I actually founded a company that's operates in a similar space to where Staffbase operates. Working with digital experience software focused on internal and defined audiences. My 10 years of running my own business with the amazing team that I had set the stage for me to think about doing something different last summer, and had the opportunity to team up with Martin, the CEO at Staffbase, and some of the other great execs here, and saw a cool opportunity to be able to really jump in with an industry leader and try something new and tackle a new challenge. And so it's been a wild 10 months.
That's awesome, and kudos to you and to Staff Base for being leaders in this space. And I want to kind of talk about business growth and specifically employee engagement, since that's going to be a hot topic of today's discussion. But kind of jumping into this, building a successful business, specifically here in North America, really requires engaged employees and strong corporate culture. So, how have you approached this challenge since joining the company 10 months ago?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple different ways to think about this, and I think I'm a big baseball guy. I played baseball in college. I actually coach my son still, who's 15 to this day. There's something to be said about the sort of mindset of that, like players coach, right? I'm from Boston, and Terry Francona was the fantastic manager that sort of reversed the curse for us after all those years with the Red Sox. And they always described him as sort of like a player's manager, right? He was someone who wanted to do what was best for the corporation, right? In this case, the Red Sox, but also do what was best for those players, and have those players be motivated and excited and driven to want to succeed for him. And I think that's really shaped a lot of the way that I think about leadership, and I think about engaging with these employees. Coming into Staffbase, my senior leadership team here in North America had been in place and together for quite some time. And I think they were all sort of at inflection points in their career where they were trying to decide what next meant for them, with someone new coming in like me. It's been awesome. It's been really rewarding to be able to team with all of them and their existing knowledge in the space and their existing knowledge in the business, and having watched Staffbase grow from a small startup that was born in Chemnitz, Germany, to $1 billion valuated unicorn in just a few years. And I think for me, teaming with them and understanding what makes them tick and what puts them in a position where they're feeling self-worth and they're feeling the desire and the drive to want to continue to make a difference, not only for themselves, but for their team members and for our customers, I think is one of the big motivating factors that's moved us forward.
And the Red Sox do have a good team this year. And being a Mets fan, we could have a whole episode about the 1986 World Series, but we'll save that for another day. From a culture standpoint, the specifically from a business leader's perspective, how do you define people-centric culture? And culture is a big thing. It's one of the everybody's trying to solve these days. How does it impact business growth and overall market expansion?
We use these phrases like engagement and connectivity and things that we really want and think we need from our team members that make sort of everything run inside of these businesses. And I don't care whether you're a startup or you're a scale up or you're a established enterprise. You're talking about these things in the boardroom of how do we better engage employees? How do we put employees in a position where they're having a better cultural impact on the business? I think one of the things that sometimes gets lost, Connor, is the fact that like everyone at the end of the day goes home to something, right? Whether it's their family or their friends or a spouse or parents or their dog or their cat or whatever it is, there's something that happens outside of work that has motivated them to work. And I think sometimes this gets lost. And so when you think about being able to deliver a workforce that's really engaged, that's really excited, that wants to push your business forward, that wants to do all the right things, I think it comes with needing an understanding of what makes each of these individuals tick in their own time and in their own world, and what happens from 5 to 9, not necessarily what happens from 9 to 5. And I think it's something that's overlooked. And I think it's really important because I can tell you that I love the intranet space and the digital employee communication space. It's awesome. But I come to work because I think I can make a difference and I'm having fun doing it. And I think that if you can create a culture where people feel like they're making an impact, and you can create a culture where you allow people to feel like the work they're doing supports everything that happens outside of work, you can end up with something that you might describe as a people-centric culture versus thinking only about the balance sheet and the income statement and the bottom line and growth numbers and how's the board going to react. And by the way, all of those things are wicked important, right? I'm not sort of dismissing any of those things because without those things, there is no business. But at the end of the day, people make businesses run. And an engaged workforce will deliver a significantly stronger outcome for that business customers, and for the employees that make all of that work. And so, I think just that acknowledgement that there's more going on than just what happens inside the four walls of sort of the quote unquote business, and really embracing that you have individuals and give them an opportunity to make a difference.
It's a great point, Dave. And speaking on the pain points that companies are facing today, what do you see as the biggest challenge that companies are experiencing when balancing this rapid growth with maintaining that employee satisfaction, that engagement piece, and that culture piece?
I think there's been a lot of shifts, right? We do employee surveys quarterly internally at Staffbase, and I think that some people would say that's too often. I actually don't think it is, and we've seen some of our customers that are actually doing employee surveys like every 6 weeks throughout the year, and I think that it comes back to wanting to ensure that you can give a voice to those who want to be heard. And if you have employees that either don't have a voice or don't want to be heard, you have employees that are unengaged. They're there, they're punching a time card, they're coming in, they're sitting at their desk, they're doing the bare minimum of what they need to do, and they're getting out of there because they've made the decision that there's a disconnect between what happens in their personal life and what happens at work. The flip side of that, which I think we have a really, really strong culture across Staffbase, but certainly here in the Americas, is that those things are intertwined, right? I'm not having conversations every day with my team where they're saying, "Oh, I feel like my work-life balance is off," or "I'm struggling with this." They're actually looking to blur those lines, right? That we're working to be able to enjoy our life. And by enjoying our life, it sets us up to have motivation to go to work and to perform and to, be promoted and to earn more money and to do the things that really get people excited. And this doesn't matter whether you're in high tech like we are, or you're a teacher, or you're a lawyer, you're a doctor. You think about the interactions that you have and how those interactions affect you in two different ways. One way is your interaction between you and the business, and the other interaction is between you and your coworkers. And I think that if you boil it down to that quite simply, you're in a situation where you can drive engagement by understanding that those two markers have to be pointed in the right direction, or you end up with unengaged employees that don't want to be there. You end up with high turnover, lots of attrition. You struggle to sort of recruit and attract new talent. And so I think all of those things tie together. But at the end of the day, it really is about creating a culture that puts people in a position where they feel like they're making a difference and making an impact. And I mean, as you know, like the amount of applicants we see all the time, I mean, we're getting literally hundreds, if not thousands of resumes a day across the globe. People are constantly looking for their place, right? Where they can fit in, where they can make an impact. And it's not just about money, it's about feeling like you found a place where you belong. And I think that is a little bit hard to measure sometimes. And so sometimes it gets left out of the conversation, but I think it's really important.
Yeah. No, I think that's how you see some employees stay at certain companies for not just a year or so, but for much longer. I want to bring up the USC study and kind of the talking about the overall business aspect of this. Staffbase recently conducted a study with USC examining employee communication and from a business growth standpoint, what were some of the findings in that study that really stood out to you, Dave, that really were most valuable?
Yeah, some of the things that stood out were things that I think if you were to sit back and say, how would you think about this logically? You'd probably come to that conclusion anyway, right? But the study really showed that organizations that have like very frequent, good quality communications that exist not only from the business to the employees, but between the employees, drive better outcomes. They're more profitable. They have higher retention. People want to understand what's going on inside of businesses, like full stop. And I think that gets lost. And the bigger the company is, the easier it is to get lost in that. And I think one of the things that gets me excited about this space and why I'm now, in year 12 in the employee communications world is because you can have a tangible impact on the way everybody feels inside your business. I used to talk a lot about with customers about the lack of engagement that they have with their employees. And I remember I'd be in these rooms and I'd be talking to CEOs or CMOs, even CIOs, and they'd say, well, we really have an engagement problem. And I'd say, well, where do we want to start? How do you want to tackle that? And they say, well, let me tell you about our CEO, or let me tell you about my senior management team. And I'd sort of like start to laugh and put my hand up and stop the conversation. And I'd say, look, you're a large, growing, profitable enterprise. Your engagement problem isn't with the CEO and it's not with your senior leadership team. They're the most engaged people at the business. The people that aren't engaged is your like almost like your like lowest common denominator employee. Someone who doesn't get a laptop from the business, someone who's operating on their own phone, someone who's on the manufacturing floor at a retail store. So I think you really have to think about things, and we go into this in the study, it really captures this, that the communication down to everyone, to that entire workforce, to the person that feels the most disconnected from the top, the person that maybe doesn't even speak the language that that particular company speaks as their standard language for the business. Like you have these people that can very easily be disconnected, unengaged, a number on a spreadsheet somewhere or a line item in a HRIS system. Engaging them changes the entire landscape of how your business moves forward. So when I'm talking to our prospective customers today, I don't talk with them about engaging their C-suite. I talk with them about engaging the lowest common denominator employee, the people that are out in the field that are making things happen and whose voice has traditionally not been heard.
Yeah, I mean, another great point, Dave. I think you're on something here, especially with this communication aspect that businesses can really leverage. And this study has certainly proved that. So, how are you even helping leveraging your current customers, based on these findings, to really shape your growth strategy in the Americas and some of the business metrics that are most affected by communication insights that we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just about communicating, Connor. It's about communicating the right thing to the right person at the right time. And or the right people at the right time. And I think, we talk about in the story, and you think about in the USC study, and you think about how it sort of connects back to what we're doing, like quite literally, like trying to grow Americas, trying to get to 100 million of ARR here on the ground, just in Canada, Mexico, and the US. Well, so how are we going to do that? It isn't necessarily having the best product, and it isn't necessarily having the fanciest offices, right? It's none of those things. I mean, having a great product is obviously critically important, but it's about having this engaged workforce that can go out and actually tangibly communicate external to the business as well, right? So thinking about going from pitching who Staffbase is to telling stories. How can people be successful? What are people doing? How have we changed the lives of people that are using this tool? How have we helped people in times of crisis? How have we helped people in times when they didn't know what the right next thing to do in their business was, but we're so strategically aligned with them that we're allowing them to move the ball down the field in a way that makes the most sense for their business. And I think also, thinking about things through the lens of communicating with people in a way that makes sense to them, right? If I go out and I tell, a car manufacturer how fantastic I'm doing in engaging retail workers at a mall, I'm going to get a glazed over look, right? It's this sort of disconnect world, but it happens in our like SaaS software world all the time, where it's like, oh, let me tell you all these great stories, and we have all these great case studies, and let me tell you how amazing this retailer was, and you have someone, executive from Nissan North America or from Ford Corporation, both of which are staff-based customers, and they're like, I don't care about a retail worker. Like, how are you helping people on the manufacturing floor? How are you putting us in a position where our message is heard? How are you reaching the unreachable, which is a phrase that I've heard our CMO, David Bernan, and Martin, our CEO, use quite a bit. It's like, we want to reach the unreachable, because when you reach the unreachable with communications and you engage them in your business, you change the game in terms of the way that they want to interact for the business and move the business forward. But you also change the game in terms of the way they interact across the rest of the employee base. And I think that's left out of the conversation too much, that it's just as important, the connectivity between these employees, as it is between the business and the employees.
Yeah, Dave, and you mentioned, communication is key when you're speaking to the right people at the right time. No surprise here that the study found that more frequent communication correlated with higher employee satisfaction.
Yeah.
What do businesses really need to do? You have these great insights, time to drive business results. So what measurable impact have you seen when you're speaking to customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that shockingly, in spite of many of the C-suites that are out, not only just with our customers, but organizations I've worked with in the past, as well as, even prospective customers that are out there, I think you'd be surprised with the amount of people at organizations who actually can't articulate what the company's goals are. That sounds like so simplistic, but if you've got 10,000 employees and 8,000 of them can't articulate what the company goal is, you sort of run into the problem we were talking about earlier, which is the C-suite knows what the goals are, right? They've set the goals, and senior management knows what the goals are because they're being held accountable to it. But if the rest of the business doesn't, not only has your communication failed, but you've got a bunch of people rowing the boat in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
And I think that, for what we're trying to do is really tell the story to this underserved leadership group, right? If you think about communicators, right, at enterprise companies, they may not have as much swagger as the CIO has, or the CMO in the business, and certainly the CEO has. And I think, our big marketing theme this year at Staffbase is the elephant in the room. This is one of the big elephants in the room, is that you can have the best external marketing in the world. You can have the best business strategy on paper in the world that your board sign off on. If the people that are actually making things move don't know what direction you're going in, or more importantly, why that's the direction that you're going, then what are you solving? And look, this no one's perfect at this. I had a senior leadership team, my senior leadership team here in North America. We had an offsite at the beginning of the year in Brooklyn. And after the offsite, I was on the plane flying back to Boston, and I penned this LinkedIn post and a picture of all of us in Brooklyn, in front of City Hall. It talked about all the things we talked about. And I posted it out to my, I don't know, 7,000 LinkedIn followers. And the next day I was sitting there and I'm like, why did I post that there? I should have posted that on our intranet. I said, because actually my followers probably don't care all the amazing things that came out of my strategy with my senior leadership team. But the 180, 200 people in North America and the 800 staff basers around the globe, they care a lot in a big way. And so for me, it's like, even I live in this world, and sometimes it's easy to forget that the communication of the why is so important and it's so easily left out. But it really can change the game for your workforce and really drive that engagement that people say they want, but sometimes don't know how to attain.
That's a really fascinating perspective. I want to dive into kind of the strategic leadership, the fun part of all this, and we'll start with the future of work because that's always a fun topic to cover. And when we're talking about the future of work, things could change so rapidly now. It's so much evolving, like in technology, particularly right here at home. So, how are trends like, return to office? And, we all went home for, the foreseeable future 5 years ago for the pandemic, and we were talking about the future of work and what things might look like, 5 years from time. And here we are. AI is a big topic right now, and it's affecting every part of your business and every industry's business strategy. So, how do you see the future of work right now evolving in 2025, Dave?
Yeah, it's if you asked me in March of 2020 this same question, the answer I wouldn't have given you was it'll kind of look like it did yesterday. But now, fast forward 5 years, if I'm being honest, kind of looks like it did in 2019. And so the future of work doesn't necessarily mean that the past was wrong or outdated. I think that we evolved through COVID and we evolved through everybody going home. And now you're seeing some companies who are really sort of, flying in the face of what they know their workers want and saying, look, if you're not, I don't know, it's the JP Morgan, if you're not 5 days back in the office, like go find another job, right? I don't think that's the answer, but I will tell you that there's a collaboration that happens when you're together and when you're listening to what's happening in the people around you, and when you get up and you're able to work on a whiteboard together, and when you sit down and you think about how to take that strategy and actually implement it and make it work, there's something to be said for people not being in their home offices and doing that. And I think we've seen that, right? And so, on my first day at Staffbase, I flew from Boston down to New York because I'm technically based in New York, and that's where nearly all of our go-to-market team is in the States and in Canada. And I'm sitting there and I'm introducing myself to all these people, and I'm forgetting all their names already, like right out of the chute. And then everybody left for lunch, and I'm sitting there by myself, right? Like super awkward first day of work. And this gentleman comes over and introduces himself. He happens to lead like sales strategy for me now. And we went out and grabbed a sandwich, and we sat on this bench and we're having a sandwich. And he looked at me and he said, there's a lot of people that think hiring you is a big mistake. And I said, what, do these people know me? He said, no, it has nothing to do with you. You're just in Boston and we're here. And, the other half of the people that aren't in New York are in our office in Minneapolis. And so, how are you going to tackle that? And what I said was, and which I believe is that in-person time and the whiteboard time and the office time and the strategy time that happens together is so incredibly important, which is why I've flown, I don't know, 100,000 miles in the first 5 months of this job. As I said a minute ago, I think it gets lost. I think it gets lost that to build strategy, you need to have strategy. And I don't think people think that way. They think, oh, we'll come up with a new strategy. I was reading a book recently where the gentleman in the book was saying that if your strategy is the opposite of something that's like so obvious or so stupid, then it's not a strategy at all. Like if the strategy is we should go back to work. Well, what's the opposite? The opposite is we all should just stay home. Well, the answer isn't we should all just stay home. That's not a strategy. It's just a different perspective. So we really need to think through what it means to grow these businesses together, how we use communication to do that. But in terms of future of work, I think it's getting people back together. That doesn't mean 5 days a week and 250 days a year, but it means putting big brains in the room together and having people feel recognized for the work that they're doing, which is really hard when you're sitting at home in your home office by yourself and telling the kids to be quiet and hoping the dog doesn't bark. It's hard to feel recognized for the work that you're doing. So I think that there's a really good balancing act that the best companies are doing right now, which is, 3, 4 days in the office this week, 2, 3 days in the office next week. You're on the road, you're with customers, you're getting the time that you need. But I think that in-person time is going to be a big part of what the quote unquote future of work is. And like I said, it kind of looks like what it looked like before.
I completely agree, Dave. I think that's a great point, especially that given that face-to-face time is irreplaceable. And I think that's what, after a few months being at home during the COVID time, it's like you really started to miss the office, and even just being able to not only have that whiteboard, that meeting time with your coworkers, but also going to get lunch, going after work to meet up. That is irreplaceable, and I totally agree. And I think building off that, you know, just curious about your other advice to business leaders who are looking to scale in North America to maintain that strong workplace culture, not only to travel and if you are remote or are hybrid to get that face time, but also what are some of the other things that leaders should be looking to implement to maintain this culture balance?
Yeah, I think one of there's sort of like two big topics that keep floating around. Like if you went and looked at my LinkedIn wall right now, you'd see a lot of the people I follow talking about sort of what does an ideal customer profile look like and why does that matter? And what is account-based marketing and why aren't you doing it? Right. And I think these two topics for business leaders and communications is such a big part of this because again, it comes down to who are we trying to team with? Who are we trying to talk to? Who are we trying to work with? What does that look like and how do we bring it to life? And I think there's a lot of miscommunication in the world around this, right? I think that people believe that account-based marketing is like a marketing only thing. And it's like marketing should just go find the accounts we need and market to them. And that's account-based marketing when it's not at all. It's this holistic view of how sales and marketing and sales development and strategy and customer success come together in order to deliver an experience that will make someone want to understand more about the service you offer, the product you sell, whatever it is you're delivering. And to the point we talked about earlier, when you think about the ideal customer profile, one of the big focuses that we've put on in the first 6 months that I was at Staffbase was what is our ICP? And let's throw everything out that we think we know about that, and let's use the data and let's use gut feels from sellers on what they're seeing. Let's listen to gong calls and hear how people react to messages, and let's refine this and put ourselves in a position where we know who we should be talking to, where our message will land the best. And so whether it is communication internally, whether it's communication across peers, across coworkers, whether it's communication of your business out to the world, we're communicating on everything. And I think that these two topics are really important for other business leaders. Whether you're a large enterprise or you're a startup, is making sure that you're able to tell the story about your product or service to the right person at the right time and in the right forum, and then come at them from every angle possible. And I think it's like a little bit of a rallying cry. Like we identified at the beginning of the year that there are 6,711 companies that we want to target in North America that we think are perfect for Staffbase. And the 6711 number ended up being a different number even a week later as some companies roll in and some companies roll out. But it's become like a bit of a rallying cry for us in terms of thinking about strategically how do we focus where we can win? How do we focus where we know our tools will successfully work for who we're going after versus this sort of like blindfolded, pray and spray approach that I think you see a lot of businesses that are struggling right now, trying to do out in the market. We'll demo to anyone, we'll sign anyone, but at the end of the day, these products work for certain use cases, and you got to find that, and you got to be disciplined to put yourself in a position to succeed. And so I think that's a big part of advice that I've got, things that we're living in real time right now, and advice I would give to other business leaders as they're thinking about sort of the next evolution of their growth here in North America and around the globe.
Absolutely. And curious about where you see some of the greatest opportunities for Staffbase's growth in the Americas over the next few years, and how you're kind of positioned to build and have your team capture these initiatives.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why I made the decision to join Staffbase was because I loved the sort of multi-channel communication capability of the platform. And that's not like a cliche, like, oh, we have multi-channel communication. Like we have customers who are using the full suite of our software. And what that means is they're empowering people to create content once and deliver that content across their corporate intranet, across their employee mobile app in iOS and Android, across digital signage in on the manufacturing floor, in the break rooms, in the offices, wherever it might be, across SMS text messaging inside of other platforms like Microsoft Teams or Viva, even ServiceNow, SharePoint, etc. So one of the things that I think we are doing a really good job of capturing is sitting down with the business leaders that we're selling to at our prospective customers, which is the head of communications, the head of HR, and the head of IT, and saying, we can enable you to better communicate. And we can enable you to be more efficient with the communication that you're delivering to be able to solve the problem we talked about earlier, where the 8,000 sort of workers that are making the company run don't even know what the company goals are. So for me, that's a huge opportunity. And we have intranet competitors out there, and we have mobile app competitors out there, and we have email competitors out there, and companies that do SMS text or crisis communication. But one of the things I think that separates us and where the opportunity for our team exists here and around the globe is really teaming with that head of communications and the head of HR, and really also the CIO to be able to say, look, this is one tool that can allow you to amplify the voice and the message and the story that you want to tell and get it to the eyeballs of the people that need to see it in the language they want, on the form factor they want, in a way that allows them to actually maintain and take that information and do something with it to help the business. And I think that that's a huge advantage for Staffbase. It's one of the reasons why I looked at basically everybody in this space and made the decision that I wanted to join this awesome company. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. Like Connor, I'm having a blast. Like we have such a good team. The product is great. Our customers are awesome. We're working with the biggest brands in the world, and we're having fun while we're doing it. To your point a few minutes ago, myself and a couple of my direct reports we went to this like bougie New York, like cold plunge sauna, like experience at like 7 in the morning last week in New York. That time together is critical, and you're seeing that relationship being built throughout the North American business for us, and it's really exciting to sit back and watch.
Well, that's awesome, Dave, and congrats again on the role and coming up on the year. It sounds like it's awesome. Staff base is awesome, and they're lucky to have a power hitter now in the middle of their lineup like yourself. So, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's great to learn more just in this industry, everything that Staff base is doing, but just talking about the business growth side of things, that unlocking that employee engagement piece, the study, the business impact, the strategic leadership. It's all so important to have these conversations, and for leaders like you who are just kind of leading this charge. It's really awesome. And to learn more about Staffbase, you can head over to staffbase.com. You can reach out to Dave on LinkedIn. But trying to wrap things up, Dave, if there's anything that you want, this that C-suite, these benefits leadership, these human resources folks to really take away back to their organizations the vision that Staffbase has for their North American market, what would that be?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, and thanks to everyone that's listening at home. If you think that your comms are struggling, we can partner with you to help you learn how to make them better. Maybe more importantly, if you think that your communications in your business is great, we want to partner with you to show you how they can be even better. And I think there's an opportunity to understand a different way of thinking about communicating across your business to generate those outcomes. Like we're here to help these businesses communicate in a way that takes their business forward. They can sell more of what they sell, they can make more of what they make, and they can have employees that feel good about what they're doing. And if we're doing that, then we're doing the right things, not only for Staffbase and its bottom line, but for the world in general.
Dave Maffei, GM, SVP of the Americas over at Staffbase. Thanks for coming on Millennium Live.
Thanks, Connor.